Good morning again. It's Sunday. It's the Sunday that will be. I don't know what the date is. That's how into the fifth. I don't know what it is. You'll see on the date of the video, and it is the Sunday where the orders have gone out to wean the sheeple off their feet. Fear drug. I used to not like to use the term sheeple, but a lot of them that's what they are. And if you haven't seen that now with the COVID-19 thing, you never will. It started yesterday night. I started to notice that all the state-sanctioned media corporations and the ones that are directly controlled by the Council of Three, they started to add more and more stories that were not coronavirus orientated, pandemic orientated. They started to de-sex the story, as Tony Blair's advisors used to say. And already all over the papers on Sunday, it's all about, well, is it time to go? Well, how do we get out? How long will it take? The usual thing. Now they can't jump straight into it because they've got the normies addicted to a drug of terror, of the pandemic, and they can't make him go cold turkey, so they have to wean him off into something else, and they'll go back to climate change or immigration issues, the usual. They got what they wanted. The Council of Three, that being the Bilderbergs, the Council on Foreign Relations, and the Trilateral Commission. They all basically work together to run the planet via mass media and bureaucrats inside governments. Now, yeah, so you can already see it. I think tomorrow, Monday or Tuesday, we'll start seeing major momentum regarding ending this thing. And I was watching, before I got that, I was just banned from Facebook for 7 days for, wait for it, what did I say? I said I missed the old days when we just had regular flus. Somebody reported me for that. And so the wanted posters are clearly up. It's not the first time. This is the confinement of space within cognition, and it is determined by the limitation of language and how you can talk about things. And this now extends to satire. Satire has been considered offensive. The same Council of Three were the ones. Oh, it originally came from things like the Fabian Council, were the Fabian Society were the ones who created political correctness and wokeness in order to limit freedom of speech. Now, I'll give you an example of, it's always been around somewhere. How many of you have the first edition of Valpurgis Night, my book, the original one, with this cover? This cover I painted on acrylics. It was a famous propaganda poster of Adolf Hitler leading the blue shirts. And I put these demonic wings on them to denote that once they took paganism and weaponized it for a political objective, they were facing the ruin of death. So that's really what that was. I was putting down the Nazis. I was showing that you must never ever allow either communism or fascism or any political system, dogmatic system, to co-opt European paganism, because it will backfire on you, as it did on this guy. Now, this got banned in Germany for this. You can barely see it, and that's actually that's even a tamer version of what was on the original propaganda poster of Hitler leading the brown shirts. But that was enough for it to get banned in Germany, so I had to redo the cover. Well, I got someone else to do, and it came up. The cover's better, and the second edition was better too as well. A lot more, well, a bit more content in it. And so that was it. I was doing a book that was a historical record of the growth of esoteric orders and neo-paganism, and how it was corrupted by the Third Reich, or the early versions of the Third Reich, in Germany in the early 20th century, in a very critical manner. I was very anti a very anti-Third Reich, very anti-extreme statist imperialism of that, and what it represented. But that wasn't enough. there was a picture on the cover that made hurty feelings, even though you couldn't even do it. And there's loads of historical channels now, and even like things painting miniatures, models of World War II dioramas are getting demonetized because they paint a tank with a German insignia on it, this kind of thing. But the red star of the communist, which has butchered far more people, that's fine. That's absolutely fine. So that was a blocked for telling a simple, harmless joke that didn't really say anything. And I posted much worse, but that was enough. That was enough. All you need is one creature with no future to make a report, and that's enough. So the journalists, the senior editors were all briefed or called or Skyped or Zoom chatted, or got a text on Saturday afternoon saying, on your Sunday editions of your papers, and also the TV station websites like BBC and RT, start to modify away from COVID-19, and even the big banners they had across the top of their websites have now gone to a smaller banner on the side. So it's being dissolved. See, it is a spiritual thing. It's very alchemical. The sublimation, the saturation has now been in the state of dissolving. The new substance has been formed. This is the crash of the political system that they wanted, and hiding it behind a pandemic. So instead of blaming the banks, and particularly things like the Federal Reserve and the European Central Bank and all the politicians who supported them, instead of them rightly getting the blame is then attributed to a virus that's just basically a regular flu. And 99% of it's come out now, it's even worse than what I said yesterday, 99% of the people who died of COVID-19 in Italy had pre-existing conditions, were seriously ill, and they don't have the full data on the final one, so it's probably 100%. They made a joke the other day that, some hysterical say, well, of course coronavirus is a deadly virus. My 96-year-old grandmother on stage 4 terminal lung cancer died of it. This is like literally what they're gaslighting people. And the sheep will eat it up, and the normies eat it up, and the meat eat it up because they fucking love it. And that's okay. We're not them. The only time you make a mistake is when you put faith in them, or if you want to wake the masses up. That's why I always say run a mile. If anyone says we've got to wake the people up, run a mile, okay? Because you're only going to rob your own life energy trying to do that. So we know where we stand. It's like being in a relationship where someone turns out to be an asshole, and then you say, okay, I know where I stand now. This kind of thing. Or you have a boss who turns out to be a dickhead, but you like the job and you want to keep. I know where I stand. I know how to play around this. I know how to survive in this and thrive by going, yes, boss, whatever you want. And when it's back, that, and that's this is the magical engagement again. And so it's very hopeful for people like us. We've survived and transcended, and all we have to do now is thrive. So I think when this thing is finally shut down, it'll be very quickly. Now, the way when someone is dying right before they die of something like pneumonia, ironically, but anything, they suddenly have a burst of life right before the end. And right before the end, they jump up and they say, oh, I want a cheeseburger and chips. Oh, I want, can you get me a beer? Can you put on a football game? And they put on, and then people are thinking, wow. And then the doctors and the nurses go, no, he or she is not getting better. This is the kind of the spasm, the alertness before the end. And then they switch on the TV for them and they go, oh, great, I want to watch the game. That's what happens. So many people tell you that happens in hospitals, in hospices and stuff like that. There's a rush at the end as the body prepares itself to shoot the spirit out of it, the psychic force out of it, and into the new vessel. Now, that's where that burst of energy comes from. Now, and you even see, I've seen it with my pets when they died. They would right before they would end, it was over at the end. I knew it. They would they'd want to go out and play or something, and. So that's what happens. It's the burst of energy to remove the psychic, the soul, from a life force from that and into a new vessel, and that's what's happening with the COVID-19. Just at the same time, they always are gaslighting you. Remember that. Just at the same time that you have politicians saying, Maybe it's time to end it. Maybe it's done. This is why they let Sweden do what they do. It's all to the gas. Sweden, life went on as normal. They let that happen just to gaslight you, just to piss you off. Don't let them piss you off. No, don't let them, because don't let them eat your psychic energy. See them and go, motherfucker, that's how you should be. And get wise to them. And a bit of savvy, bit of moxie. And I love that old term, moxie. And yeah. And so that's what that is. They're saying, oh, we need 6 months, so we need to ban people permanently in their houses. That's the right before it dies, the final, like, the final intensity, before it dies and transforms itself in a new force as, I don't know, Islamic jihad, climate change, whatever the next thing they're planning for us is, to gaslight us and control us and manipulate us. When I say us, I mean the collective, not us. Us, our tribe, right here with me. Now, yeah. So you see, and this is the abomination here is journalism, newspaper journalism, and copywriters and editors at media websites, big mainstream media. Have you ever wondered why there's such a high mortality rate among journalists, newspaper journalists, and particularly tabloid journalists, and that kind of thing? But nearly all of them, there's huge problems with alcoholism, marital failure, suicide, death, cancers, everything. They all die horribly and young, and the reason for that is they're in a profession that's basically it's unclean. You see, if someone decides he hates George Bush or hates Donald Trump or hates Hillary Clinton or hates Bernie Sanders and then makes a living out of writing about someone like that and pouring his hatred or her hatred into that article or into that cause, what happens is, because the person they're attacking did not harm them personally, what happens, they violate the laws of the natural universe. It's not the rules of honorable engagement. And so far, their bodies start to destroy them because their psychic force is unclean. Usually begins with drug addiction or alcoholism. But you can see that. And all journalists are cursed. All journalists are cursed if they embark on that. Do you remember Martin Brunt? He was the McCann propagandist for Sky News. And he doorsteps a woman in England who was basically asking questions that normal people were asking about the McCanns and their behaviour. The woman went to a hotel after he shamed her on public TV and in her own neighbourhood. She went to a hotel and killed herself afterwards. He has not had no real career. He was the golden boy of Sky News. Now he's like nothing. And that's because he was profane and unclean. And even though he was exonerated by a court, come on, man, you were responsible for her death. End of. And the profane and the unclean will always be punished for their wickedness, especially if it's so personal and so hate-filled and so vindictive and so, what's the word, partisan. That's why this is why, like, all the fanatics all end up dead or suicided, or it doesn't work out for them. They're hateful of something or someone who didn't personally attack them. And so that's why I'm always saying dogma is your enemy. And that's why journalism is kind of a doomed profession. And that's why if you're a young person going into journalism right now, studying journalism, go into music journalism or something like that. Don't go into a tabloid where you're attacking a celebrity for screwing around on his boyfriend or his wife or something, and in a hateful way, because you'll be against the laws of engagement, the rules of engagement, and natural law, because that person you're attacking in your tabloid article day after day did not. And even if it's a justified thing, it can still happen to you. And it's a same. Look, I'll give you a good example, and it doesn't have to even be a news journalist. It can be a cause. I'll give you a good example of them. The Me Too women who were involved in that. Now, I can tell you for a fact, any woman who's been really raped, really abused, doesn't stand on a stage and wait for applause. They're like soldiers who fought in real battles. They keep it inside themselves and they don't want to relive it as a big performance. So all those women who stood on the stage with their pink hats screaming, I was abused, blah, 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 etc., etc., a lot of them are already dead or dying. Because they declared war on men And in many of their cases, the abuse they suffered was some guy leaving them or cheating on them with another woman. And that was the same thing as, being battered in a fucking corner of a room with fists and stuff like that, or raped. And a woman who's been really, really raped is just like a soldier who's seen horrors in wars. Doesn't want to make a spectacle out of it. In fact, one of the false accusers of Rolf Harris died of ovarian cancer almost immediately. And another one got motor neuron disease. So, those of you who get whipped up in these crusades and want to be a hero, if you have not been personally wrong to the level that you're claiming, remember, the laws of the universe will wrong you accordingly. Remember that. So don't make up shit that you're a big time victim when you've never been a victim, because the universe will make a victim of you. They will validate your desires to feel victim. That's why all these SJWs are all doomed. They're all offended. They all feel like they're victims of something. Most of them won't live. Most of them won't die young. There'll be mostly suicides, but a lot of it will just be things like cancers and stuff like that. The universe will validate their sense of being oppressed when they never were, and so on. So that's why you don't get involved in those kinds of things. So those journalists that think they're great now, and the editors who are reissuing their orders from the Council on Foreign Relations, and also university professors too, and the CFO, the Trilateral Commission of Bilderbergs, they all think it's hilarious right now doing this as they're told, and a lot of them have just been morons who are just following orders. That's literally what they'll be like, but they'll all suffer too. The ones at the top are the ones who are being honest in their intent. They talk among themselves. They say, how can we hide this economic collapse? Create a pandemic. And they know about magic and sorcery and this kind of thing. They know about the rules of engagement in terms of magic and stuff like that. And so they know what they're doing. And that's why they live to be a million years. Look at Kissinger, look at Rockefeller, look at Prince Philip. They live to be forever. Why? Because they're honest. Prince Philip said, I want to come back to an airborne virus to wipe out humanity. He didn't say, I love the people, I love them, this kind of thing. You see, there's a lot. This is why there's clarity of intent is a very powerful thing, whether it's good or evil. It's the clarity of that intent creates a pure stream of psychic energy, good or bad, that does not become corrupted through the battle between your cognition and your internal psyche. That's why, if you hate, hate. If you love, love. But make sure you're loving something that deserves it and hating something that deserves it. Otherwise, that's going to come flying fucking back at you. And that's how that works. You don't mess with the natural laws of the universe. And any magician who says you can, when I say natural laws of the universe, I mean the checks and balances that are so apparent within nature. You see it everywhere. There's an equilibrium. It's not particularly always pleasant, but that equilibrium of regularity is always there. And if there's one thing you can say about the universe in terms of how our cognition perceives it, it is that it desires two things: regularity of systems coupled with novelty of process in order to generate new tangents, evolution, and so on, changes in. That's where magic comes in. You sort of become a proactive version of novelty. So we're in the end game now, and ironically, one of the reasons I know we're in the end game of this COVID lockdown is I'm not feeling as much fun as I did the last few days. I was really relaxed and enjoying it all until yesterday evening, and I felt like the holiday's over. And I'm sure some of you are feeling it. That sense of bliss you had during the week. It's like being on holidays when you're a kid at the seaside, and we're now today. We know tomorrow's a day, or the day after is the day we have to pack up and go home. Well, I had that feeling last night. About 8 or 9 o'clock last night, I started to feel like party's over. Back to the way things were. But of course, things will never be the same way again for many people, particularly those who are locked into the system. Now, the Irish government and other governments, what they call are giving away. Well, in Ireland, they're throwing money at people, but that's all electronic money. See how that's another thing they've got us with as well. We'll bail you out. We'll give you the money. We'll sort you out. It won't be cash, and ever, it won't ever be cash. See, and because it's cash shares germs. Now, I want to talk about other aspects of the more conspiratorial end of it. I have seen absolutely no evidence that 5G has anything to do with it. That's not saying I'm not wary of 5G. I am, and I think that down the road is when we'll know what 5G is really about, but it wasn't coronavirus. And those who say that animals will be immediately destroyed by 5G, well, all you have to do is look at all the animals that came into the towns and cities when we were all locked up. The 5G is already installed and it didn't affect them directly. They seem to be having great fun. We see those goats, so it's not 5G, it's nothing to do with it. Although I do have lots of reservations about 5G. But, like many people and even some governments and regional authorities, but it wasn't coronavirus. That one you can forget about. The mandatory microchip thing, look, there'll never be a mandatory microchip. Look, most of us already have it. I have to carry around the national, it's called a social services card. We all have them in Ireland. Many countries carry around a national ID card. It has a chip in it. Your bank card has a chip in it. Your passport has a chip in it. Your credit card has a chip in it. Your fucking library card has a chip in it. They don't have to put the fucking chip in you. You're carrying around phones 24 hours a day. They don't have to inject you with the microchip, sit you down there while you're being injected with it. So, I mean, it's like you have no sense when you talk about these things. You're already chipped. You have been for years. The other one is mandatory vaccines. They're never going to come and knock on your door and mandatorily vaccinate you. It's not going to happen. You'll always have the choice to say no to the demon. And they don't give a fuck if you say no, because you see with the Corona 19 virus that the majority of them, and you're talking about probably 90% of humanity, will run up with their arms rolled up saying, inject me now, please, please inject me now. They don't have to do mandatory anything. Most of the chattel out there will they'll beg for it. They beg for their oppression. They beg for their slavery. And you think they have to do it? Do you think they need squads and brown shirts and stormtroopers with needles full of chemicals? They don't need to do that. What they do is the classic social, they put a rainbow flag outside a vaccination place and say free vaccinations. And the picture of a celebrity or a sports star promoting it with his arm rolled up, and they will run in like dogs in a greyhound track when the gates are opened. See, this is the whole thing about they're going to manage. Where does that come from? That's not coming from nowhere. Look around you. Look around you. If you haven't learned that, if you haven't learned that you're surrounded by utter and total livestock, completely controlled by government and corporations after the COVID-19 thing, you will never ever know it. So you're not one of them. So what? It's fuck them. What happens to them is none of your business. And fuck them. You can live out your own life and enjoy it. Why are you getting paranoid about things that they won't do to you because they don't care about us? You have this thing pushed by the likes of Alex Jones and the rest of them. They're going to come and take us away. The dissidents, the patriots. They don't give a fuck about us because there's so few of us. We're nothing. Once we're not starting real trouble, they don't give a shit. In many ways, all roads still lead to Rome. The Roman Empire didn't give a shit what religion you worshipped, or what politician you followed, or what your philosophical beliefs were, once you didn't start an army. And that all roads still lead to Rome in that way. All roads still lead to Rome in that way. They still lead there. They don't care once you're not starting an army. And so that's why I always say to activists, don't be jumping up and down, punching your fists in the air. And for anyone else, like they can always, anyone, they allow, you see, people say to me, what kind of magic do they do? Well, they're all Christians, Jews, and atheists to begin with. But through their Freemasonic groups and their Freemasonic, there's another reason I think it's back. My Rosacea has flared up again today, and that was nearly completely gone during the the lockdown. It shows there's a strong psychological element to that as well. When I'm happy it's gone, when I'm a little bit, well, I would say down, but I'm back to the kind of the survival mode of this world we live in, it comes back. But yeah, that's very interesting. And they allow the likes of David Icke and stuff out there for a simple reason that they they don't, like people say they're all Satanists. They're not Satanists. Most Satanists I know are some of the finest human beings I've ever met. In fact, I've never met a Satanist who was an asshole or a horrible person. They're not Luciferians. I'm a pagan Luciferian, and other Luciferians are not involved in that. So forget it. I don't know where you got all that from. You got all that from Christian Bible Belt stuff. They're all Christians and Jews, and many are atheists. However, where they get their hocus pocus from is their membership of Freemasonic orders and lodges. So that's kind of like their secular spookiness, their secular hocus pocus. And that's where they get this kind of their own kind of magical rules of engagement for. And this includes the idea that you walk across the threshold. You're given the poison chalice. It's up to you to drink it or not. And then they allow you the option of someone saying, well, maybe the fluid inside the chalice is not poisoned, but if you drink it from the rim rather than sucking it with a straw, you could live. You see? And they're the David Ickes and all those big superstar alternative people of this world. They allow them to exist because they give us the choice to see who is, in a funny kind of way. They respect us more than they'll ever respect the one screaming, inject me with the vaccine now. Hey, put the microchip in me now. Oh, Jesus, save me. They see them as the lowest of the low. When Henry Kissinger said military men are animals to be used in the process of foreign policy, guess what? He wasn't lying. The truth hurts. That doesn't mean that military folks are animals or anything like that, really. It means that once you sign that piece of paper, you don't have any rights when you sign up, and you're an animal to be used in foreign policy. You have no human rights anymore. Now, there are soldiers who enter into that saying, that's fair enough, I want a career in soldiering, I want a career in the Navy, I want a career in the military. And they sign up for that, and they're okay with that until they're discharged or whatever. But the ones who get upset about it, the truth hurts. Yes, that's what you are. Sorry, from the Roman legions to the special forces today, you are an animal to be used in military. Now he's just telling you the truth. Now, and you're angry at him. You're angry at him for telling you the truth, and that's how their Freemasonic-y thing works. They tell you the truth. That's why when you rise to the degrees, you're confronted more and more with your own self. And when you get to the 33rd degree, they will have people spying on you. So if you're screwing your secretary at work, if you're doing this, that, and the other, you're stolen money, you're up to no good, you're a pedophile, whatever, a criminal. When you get to the 33rd degree, you have to make the confession that you were involved in all these things, right? And then you become a mother's son. You become your mother's son because your father is dead. So that means when your father is dead, you're dead. So that's why, when they're in trouble, they hold their hands up and say, "Is there no help for the mother's son?" They're no longer themselves. They're now the father, and the family is now the Freemasonic Lodge, and the Freemasonic Lodge operates under secrecy, but not to each other. And if they can handle all that stuff in the Freemasonic Lodge at the 33rd degree, then they are comfortable with themselves. So what you heard Henry Kissinger say at that time is a classic Masonic line: the truth, the unbridled truth, the pure light of Lucifer. Now that's the esoteric Lucifer, not the pagan Lucifer, the Greek or Roman god, which is also a very interesting thing. But the god of Freemasonry is the esoteric Lucifer, the argent of Lucifer, the all-seeing eye of Lucifer, the absolute truth you cannot fucking hide. And you should never hide the truth within yourself, but you should hide the truth from the profane, because they can't handle it. Sometimes, like with Kissinger, it slips out. So you never have to, those of you who are out there going, I'm going to be arrested now, microchipped, oh, the camera, oh, I'm going to give me the mandatory, it's not going to happen. Not gonna happen. But what an education this COVID-19 has been, eh? As I said to somebody yesterday, well, somebody had mentioned it was worse than 1984, and it was, and I'll tell you why. 1984 got to, Airstrip 1 got to the position it was, and the likes of Julia and Winston Smith got to the position that they got to from decades of brutal war and absolute poverty. All it took with the people in your neighbourhood was for the pubs to be closed and the sports to be off TV. Fuck them if they can't take a joke. You have been given the greatest education of your life with this COVID-19. Use it wisely, my friends.